We continue our journey of digging deeper into the experience of forgiveness as the heart of the gospel, enabling components of discipleship to sort of come to life. We dealt with justice, being healed, and being free. This week we're dealing with another vital dimension of discipleship, and that is being full of grace. This week we're exploring that one of the consequences of accepting that one is forgiven and strives to be forgiving is that one is filled with grace. The experience of grace is the theme of one of the most sung hymns of communities of faith, as well as being one of the most popular songs in the secular culture of the United States. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was blind and now I can see. This is the prevailing words of John Newton, an ex-slave trader, writing his own poetry of autobiography of conversion as a song of faith. There's another hymn which is seldom sung in faith communities and never in venues of our secular culture. It's hymn number 120 in our United Methodist hymnal. And the first verse is, "Your love, O God, is broad like beach and meadow, wide as the wind and our eternal home. You leave us free to seek you or reject you. You give us room to answer yes or no. Your love, O God, is broad like beach and meadow, wide as the wind and our eternal home." The other verses are just as rich. And in the context of these words of two hymn writers, grace for me is best defined in the statement of faith emerging 30 years ago in the United Methodist Church that we are individuals and a community of open hearts, open minds, and open doors. These words capture the life and teachings of Jesus. Jesus was radically open to every human being, stranger or neighbor, enemy or disciple. Jesus' mind was open as he often asked more questions than he gave answers. And Jesus' life was one who could not stand fences, but rather lived a life of open gates for all to enter. The human community bound together by agape love, or in the meaning of Ubuntu, humanity is a bundle tied together. Now, these words capture the spirit of faith communities. Whether a local church or a denomination, in my opinion, they get it right when they follow Jesus, a radical lifestyle of openness. And openness is a step beyond welcoming. You know, you can welcome with a handshake and words of beauty. But openness is more than a handshake and words. It's the embrace. It's being at one another's table, sharing life together. You see, Openness is accepting one another regardless of one's lifestyle, for as described in the African understanding of Ubuntu, humanity is that bundle. When one is ostracized, all are ostracized. When one is rejected, all are rejected. But most of all, when one is loved, all are loved. Yes, you see, grace for individuals and for community as faith is being committed to open hearts, open minds, and open doors. Amazing grace is when love is broad like a beach and meadow, wide as the wind. The wind has no borders. It is the experience of being accepted by God, not because we deserve it, but because this is God's nature. Grace is also the chosen way of life, those who follow Jesus, who strive to be forgiving as we have been forgiven. One of the most confusing experiences I've had in my experience of 65 years in ministry is watching the tragic journey of many who attempt to ascribe to the way of grace, but are unwilling to strive to be forgiven. These are those who are willing to sing and proclaim amazing grace, but refuse to open their hearts to those who are different. They cherish amazing grace for themselves, but build fences to be sure that others who are not as clean and pure are excluded. They sing amazing grace, but are closed-minded as if they have all the answers, and live in an ivory tower marked by purity, cleanliness, and judgment. These are those who are the architects of division rather than reconciliation. They're architects of division in nations, in communities, in churches, in denominations, and even families. These are those who have a vertical vision, always looking down on others. These are those who cheer when others fail because they fail because of the splinter in their life, but refuse to see the log that is in their own life. These are those who preach hell and damnation from the pulpit and cheer amen from the pew as they bask in the sunshine of their own salvation. These are those who cherish their own experience of being forgiven, but refuse to be forgiving. Indeed, it's not amazing grace. Amazing grace reveals the miracle forgiveness, enabling one who has been forgiven to be forgiving. You see, being forgiven without the consequence of striving to be forgiving prevents an individual or group from being agents of reconciliation or restoration. You see, being forgiven without being forgiving builds fences, authorizes judgment, and denies the interdependence of all God's children. Ubuntu, the miracle of forgiveness. You see, without the miracle of forgiveness, the word grace is, in the words of the Apostle Paul, a noisy gong and an irritating, clanging cymbal. But with Utumbu, with the miracle of forgiveness, grace is amazing, broad like the beach and meadow, wide as the wind. Open hearts, open doors, and open minds are enabled by the miracle of forgiveness. And we call it amazing grace. For your thought and conversation, what's your response to the understanding that Jesus' life and teachings was that being full of grace includes both the acceptance of being forgiven and striving to be forgiving? What's your response to the understanding that grace is not a belief, but a chosen way of life? Thanks for being a part of our journey.